something in astrophysics that's a good analogy.
Yeah, probably we find an analogy to something using that. רגע, אני רק אשלח להם שזה עובד השיעור. כן, אז מה אלנדר שוביץ אמר?
הוא אומר שיש פושטקים
כן.
ששונאים יהודים, אבל הם נולדו יהודים, אבל ששונאים אותם בעצמם.
אוי, זה לא טוב.
למשל, יש אחד שקוראים לו נחום צ'ומסקי.
מי זה?
צ'ומסקי.
צ'ומסקי?
Somebody he doesn't like who he says will be a communist.
צ'ומסקי זה...
You think I'm kidding?
מי זה צ'ומסקי? לא מכיר. אוקיי.
צ'ומסקי זה פושטק ממגדל השן.
מגדל השן, כן?
כן, והוא נגד ישראל, נגד יהודים, הוא פלסטינים כזה. והרבה אנשים כמוהו חושבים שהוא חכם כי יש לו תיאוריות הרבה שטויות על בלשנות. אני כמו בלשן, אני חושב שזה שטויות. יש אנשים שאני מסכים, אני מסכים איתו תחת 0. תחת 0%.
וואי.
אז דרשוביץ אומר גם שהוא פושטק, הוא טיפש כזה, ואני חושב שאי אפשר לאהוב בן אדם כזה.
קשה, אל תגיד אפשר, תגיד קשה. אני מסכים, קשה. קשה.
אז אתה באמת לא תשמע, תשמע צ'ומסקי זה השם הזה?
אני לא מכיר, באמת אני לא מכיר. סליחה, אולי זה בעיה אצלי שאני לא מכיר, אבל אני לא מכיר. זה מפורסם?
הוא מפורסם מאוד במגדל השן.
אני לא במגדל השן. אני
ברחתי משם.
אני מצא משהו מהשן, אני הולך לרופא שיניים. זה מגדל השן אצלי.
אני ברחתי משם, אני שונא מגדל השן. זה כמו אקלסיה קתולית.
אוי ואבוי.
אם לא מסכים עם זה, זורקים אותך לאש.
אוי ואבוי, זה לא טוב.
זה לא טוב. אז אני ברחתי לפני ששרפו אותי.
אוי ואבוי.
ומה אני אמרתי? צ'ומסקי, זה באמת פושטק. הוא אומר שאנשים נולדים כבר עם השפה במוח.
באמת?
כן.
זה נכון?
זה לא נכון.
היי, יואב.
אתה שמעת אולי יש ילדים שמגדלים עם חיות כמו זאב כזה ואין להם שפה. זה הכל, זה המוח לא, איך אומרים זה?
מעכל.
מעכל?
לא מעכל, המוח לא מעבד. Processing, המוח לא מעבד.
develop.
develop, מפתח, נכון.
הוא מפתח,
רגע, אני אביא...
מה שחיה.
Last Thursday, for the evening lesson, I walked into the room, shut the notes, and I was writing to the owner of the school, and said, I'm done teaching this guy, and I don't want to take that. It was that bad.
It can really drain your life force.
I'm reading a book on that now by a doctor. It's like because of him, those kind of books that I sort of knew about but didn't take that seriously before, now I'm like, no, I gotta read this.
אוקיי, זה...
כמעט כל יהודים מכירים צ'ומסקי, לא...
אתה רוצה לבוא לדבר? זה כולם רואים עכשיו. אתה רוצה לדבר? אם אתה עומד פה, כולם רואים אותך. כל מי שמסתכל ביוטיוב הוא רואה אותך. פה, במצלמה. כן. אתה שומע צ'ומסקי? תשמע. פושטק אתה. אתה ביסת הפושטק, הפושטק כאלה. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he can control this.
Those kids tend to be quite intelligent.
Okay, I know you're worried. The cupcakes are on their way. So, okay. I saw you thought I was distracted. I didn't pay attention.
The week will be a wonderful week.
Yeah. Okay. Cupcakes are coming down. Okay. In the meantime, okay, we'll talk about. אנחנו צריכים לדבר עם כולם, זה. אוקיי. אתה צודק, זה יותר אנשים. Okay, so let's delve into this what a controversial topic which is bothering a lot of people, and in the context of the holiday of Shavuot, it is really time to look into the sources of that and try to understand why is it so that Judaism is determined on the mother lineage as opposed to the father. So we'll always start.
I think that's simple. Nobody can prove the father.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. Well, nowadays there are some ways to at least assess. But there's some truth to that as well.
Sure, you find in some writings of Rashi something like being precursor of modern genetics.
Well, yeah, they had their share of knowledge. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll keep you in suspension, like President Trump said, whether he's going to accept the election result. It was the final debate. It was the only thing I saw because it was broadcast and I managed to fetch a few minutes of that. It was the end of the debate, probably the last one, and then they asked President Trump, well, not President Trump, and they asked him, are you going to accept the election's result, whatever they'll be? And he wasn't willing to answer that. And they were trying, and they were trying to ask him again and again. And then finally, they said, Mr. Trump, you need to reply to that. Because they asked Hillary Clinton, of course, whatever the people will decide. And he says, I'll keep you in suspension. That was his result.
The answer is, I'll accept it if it's for me. I won't accept it if it's not.
Maybe even him was a bit reluctant to say something that bold. Or he's not reluctant to say anything bold, but maybe even that, could have
He's saying that again now.
Oh, did he?
He's already saying the election's rigged.
Oh, okay.
He said something bold quite a long time ago. He said that our Israel's capital is in Jerusalem.
Oh, that was bold, all right. Yeah.
That was bold.
Yeah, I agree.
As they procrastinated for 30 years.
Waiting for that boldness. Okay.
You know what they're doing about the extension of the railroad?
The extension of the railroad?
Yes, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Oh, I heard they're doing it.
They had prophesied this would happen.
There was a plan to dig it underground all the way to the old city.
Uh-huh.
And the station there will be station Trump.
Trump. Oh, they'll call it Trump Station.
Who can refuse to approve that?
Well, by all means, yeah. Okay, so a child, growing up, having a lot of questions, approaches his mother and asks her, how did mankind develop? And the mother answers the child with great attention, and she says to him, many years ago, thousands of years ago, God Almighty had created the world in 6 days. On the 6th day, He created Adam and Eve, and they reproduced and had children, and their children had children, and that's how mankind came about. Several days later, the child get a grab of his dad, of his father, and he says, how did mankind develop? And the father was obviously distracted with other things and, couldn't be bothered. And he says, he's bugging you. Well, Dad, answer the question. And he says, there were monkeys, and the monkeys eventually developed with evolution, and then that's how mankind was introduced. So the child goes back to the mother, and she says, I asked Dad about that same question I asked you, and he had a complete different answer. So the mother says, well, Dad was talking about his family, I was talking about my family. It was one way of coping with, I know, it's not accurate, it's just for the joke, I know. Anyway, he was talking about where he comes from, I was talking about where I come from. But
I told you when the rabbi and the priest and the minister were debating when life began, I told you that a long time ago.
Perhaps. No, tell me.
I think maybe a year ago I said it, but the Catholic priest said, well, of course, life begins at the moment of conception.
Uh-huh.
And then the Protestant minister says, no, I beg to differ with you, life begins at the moment of birth.
Uh-huh.
The rabbi waves his hands and says, no, you guys are both wrong. Life begins when the kids leave home and the dog dies.
Okay, one way of. So really, the holiday of Shavuot is known to be the holiday of conversion, and we'll soon take care of that because some people commented conversion. Since when did we need conversion? But obviously the transformation of us being Jewish, which is accepting the Torah, getting the Torah from God, and getting our designation as the Jewish nation, took place at the holiday of Shavuot. The preparation for that started in Exodus as soon as God took us out of Egypt. Then the 49 days of counting between Passover until finally 7 weeks, 7 times 7. Then we're getting ready to receive the Torah from God and an introduction of being Jewish people. So,
what does that mean, Giyur Olam?
what does it mean? What?
Giyur Olam.
Giyur Olam?
Yes, I think that's what I read in your email.
Giyur Olam? No, I said Chag Giyur, the holiday of conversion. That's why I didn't write Giyur Olam. No.
Not Olam, because we thought that the Jews were converted.
Yeah, no. No, that's a very common mistake. A lot of people who don't know Judaism have thinking about Jewish people and wondering. We don't proselytize. We don't convince people to join our club because it's exclusive. No. I mean, it's not. What did he say?
Yes, chosen people, chosen by everybody else to muck about.
Well,
So that's why we got a lot of people wanting to convert.
We even accept the wives who converted in America, but not the local.
But listen, cheesecake, pancakes, and breakfast, this all goes up. Now upstairs, my wife is preparing. We actually went to the dairy and we get milk because I can't rely on the milk here. I don't know what's in, I generally don't rely on a lot of stuff, but for the kosher. I went to the dairy and we. Oh my goodness! When did this happen? Right?
When didn't it happen?
They put meat into milk.
They could mix other stuff into milk, like plastic, for instance, which had happened not too long ago. Particles. Plastic is kosher. Well, maybe for you. I rather my kids.
Plastic instead of tapioca beans.
Yeah. So we went to the dairy several times. I got 70 liters of, there's a dairy. I went one in Jai and one in Taoyuan. I found one in Taoyuan. So from the dairy, we got milk. For the milk, we produced cottage cheese, whipped cream, and ricotta cheese, and a few other stuff. There's a fellow in Taichung, a Jewish person who lives here. Is in Taichung, and he has his own production of dairy stuff, cheeses. So he was very helpful. He makes cheeses, yeah, and he sells them. Very, very good quality. And everywhere. It was also one in Taipei that carries his cheese. I'll give you his contact. Very good guy. Well, let's have a cow. Yeah. So yeah, that's the noise upstairs. Is all the. You like dairy? Wait, you're vegan, aren't you?
No.
Vegetarian.
Dairy.
Okay. So.
I was actually going to check and see if I have cheese. I should have brought it.
Oh, don't worry. You're in for Friday. Okay, so here's what Maimonides says in the laws of Israel. The Jewish people entered the covenant with God with 3 acts: circumcision, immersion, and offering a sacrifice. Circumcision took place in Egypt before the Paschal sacrifice, of which Exodus says, no uncircumcised person shall partake of it. Moses, our teacher, circumcised the people. Think of that. That's quite a ceremony there. Immersion was performed in the desert before, like your Moshe, before the giving of the Torah. What?
Moses was the first boy.
The first boy was God, because Abraham was circumcised by himself with God aiding him. But states, sanctify them today and tomorrow and have them wash their garments. Okay, washing garments like immersing in water, a type of thing. Sacrifice were also offered then. Stated, and he sent out the youth of the children of Israel, and they brought burnt offerings. They offered them as ancients of the entire Jewish people. So there were 3 acts which symbolized conversion that took place with the Jewish people at that time. Yes?
So is washing the garments, is that like a precursor to like the Christians to a baptism? Did they take that idea?
We have immersion, which is going in mikveh water, which is, natural source of water.
Not putting your head under the surface.
Completely, being soaked in water just for a second. Yeah, obviously the Christians had to take it from somewhere, so they did take it from Judaism. Yeah, but this is kind of symbolizing, because remember we're talking about a conversion which was initiated by God. It wasn't like somebody who wants to become Jewish and then they follow the protocol. This is how the Jewish people started, right? So we had a group of Israelites which were related to each other, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the 12 tribes, and then they have to be, incorporated into that nation. So that funny, right? Well, that's what Jews do all the time, right? They incorporate business and they make money off of that. But yes.
I heard that women must go into mikvah for conversion and men just have a little circumcision, that's all.
Well, first of all, the circumcision is not very little. Depends on how old you are. But mikvah is mandatory both for men and women. Separately, of course.
I don't all that as a conversion, but just because I couldn't have it in my child.
Oh, really? Oh, well, how old were you when you were circumcised?
25.
25. Where'd you do it? In America?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
By a real doctor.
Well,
it was in the hospital. It was all.
I have a lot of I have a lot of credit for you. I'm 25.
And you know who organized it? Lubavitcher Rabbi.
Oh, the Lubavitcher Rabbi organized it.
Yehuda Gorodetsky, something like that.
Okay.
What is his name?
Gorodetsky?
Yehuda Gorodetsky or Gorodetsky.
Gorodetsky, yeah, Gorodetsky. Gorodetsky, yeah.
I forget already because that was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, when after they do the surgery, I don't think you remember anything.
The white one.
I was happy that it took place under anesthesia. Yeah, I wouldn't think other.
Not like Abraham or
Yes. This, by the way, is the reason why many communities are reading the scroll of Ruth in the time of Shavuot, right? The scroll of Ruth, which is, according to most communities, we read it, and one of the questions that asked by Al-Quds Shimoni, the scroll of Ruth does not have any rules or commandment, then why was it written, right? Why was it written?
Give us a break from rules and commandments.
That's one way of looking at it. You got cupcakes for that. Okay, but we read it, many people read it in the community, but Ruth actually had done what our forefathers did. She went and converted. Ruth is, of course, the matriarch of King David. King David descends from Ruth and Boaz after several generations. The scroll of Ruth ends with counting the generations from Ruth until King David, and that's what it says in Sefer HaManhig. It says, our fathers only received the Torah through circumcision, immersion, and sacrifice. And Ruth also converted, as she said, no circumcision for that. Okay, but I just wanted to clarify.
Didn't you just say there was some kind of
But for Ruth, no, no, women are exempted. For wherever you go, I will go. This is a quote from what she said to her mother. I don't know if you know the story of Ruth. This is quite an interesting story. It happened in Israel. This was a time of famine, and there was an individual who was very well established, but also deviated from the way, and he decided instead of staying there and supporting his brethren, he decided to take care of himself, took his immediate family and moved to another foreign country, and his two sons married two women, which were not Jewish, and after a while, unfortunately, both their son and the person himself also died. So it was only the mother and the two daughters-in-law. And of course, her name was Naomi, and she decided that this was kind of, decree from heaven of not being there, not supporting. And she lost her husband, she lost two of her children, and she turns to her two daughter-in-laws, which are they're no longer, their husbands are no longer alive, and she says, I think this place is not for me. I'm going back home to Israel. And one of them said, okay, thank you, it was wonderful meeting you, and I'm sorry about what happened. The other said, no, I want to go with you. That was Ruth, and she said, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, your God, my God. Hence, it is a custom to say it on Shavuot. This process that Ruth went over is exactly what happened to our forefathers in the time of the first time when we were introduced through the Torah. And this helps us get into the topic of who is a Jew, who is Jewish according to the definition of Torah. And here we find several opinions of how it's determined. Yes?
How come it's the same process? She joined the Jewish people.
Correct.
The Jewish people, they themselves, you can say, joined God.
Okay.
But she joined the already established...
Yeah. Okay. So we're saying that the process she made, which we have a record of, by the way, there's several verses, or not several, but more than several verses of the story of Ruth that shows us what really a sincere convert is about. As we said in the introduction, Judaism does not proselytize. We don't necessarily believe that everyone should look like us, act like us, speak like us, give us their money, but that's a little, out of the question. But
they're complicated enough.
Yeah, we don't need any more of that. But what we do say, which is, by the way, a good thing, because our religion doesn't force itself on others, right? Well, I hope the anti-Semites would appreciate that, but they would, but they won't.
The Jews didn't try to change us.
Yeah.
They honored our religion.
And that's exactly what we're supposed to do, right? So, but on the other hand, when someone does want to join, the door is I wouldn't say open, but could be opened. It requires a lot of sincerity, a lot of effort, conviction, devotion, and we could see that from Ruth. She was really in it, and apparently she had no reason, right? You would say she was married to a Jew, so she's interested, and he's going to Jewish events. She wants to come with him. The kids are coming. No longer. He's dead. Brother is dead. The father is dead. There's no one there. It's only the woman, and she says, I tasted. I saw what Judaism is, and I feel like I want to be a part of that. And she has to go through some hurdles, a lot of hurdles, to get there.
So you can say that she did it for the love of God.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, very sincere and honest. Yes. And you could say that there's no other way than doing that. I'll put a little asterisk on it and say that a lot of people are not as sincere as they're supposed to be, but I guess this is not something that we could judge. I thank God don't have to. I'm not authorized to deal with conversion. Conversion, by the way, is a very complicated topic because we're talking about not whether this milk is kosher and this meat is okay. We're talking about human beings and people and change of thoughts and change of outlook at the world. So this authority is only reserved to prominent rabbis, and usually they get long white beards, and probably they don't dye their beards. I'm saying they get to that age, and usually it's 3 rabbis, not even 1 rabbi. There has to be an authority to really rule. So these are very sincere and serious things. Some people come to me here in Taiwan and say, I got this girl or whatever, there's a boy, whatever, want to convert. I don't deal with that. I don't do because I'm lacking the authority. I'm lacking the yeah. Well, again, I got a little bit of coming here. Yeah, it's 30 years and I'm there. Oh, look at that. No, I spoke to Dr. Heinrich. I said, I went to his 100th birthday, and he said, thank you. I'll come to your 100th birthday. So he said, that's it. That's all that matters. He promised. He said he's going to come to my 100th birthday. So. Yeah. No. You get upset. You tell him 120. No, it's coming up. Yeah, kidding aside, 102. He's getting to 102. You imagine? Amazing. Yeah. Indeed. Okay, so we have in most of the things that we know in history, the father, the masculine, the father lineage is more dominant. We have it, right? So we have the father, which gives, of course, nowadays a family name. The priesthood, if someone is a Kohen or Levi, priest or Levi, that is only determined by the father, and the tribal affiliation and inheritance. This is also determined by the father. And this, by the way, family name, which most people take their father's family name, is very ancient. This is something that we can find already in the Torah when we say, Bnei Yehuda, L'Shela Mishpachat HaShelani, L'Peretz Mishpachat HaPartzi. Everyone gets their family name, their last name, by their father. But actually, when we look a little closer, we could see that the father only decides about the details of the matter, but not the matter itself. The most important definition, the actual essence of who is a Jewish person, is solely dependent by the mother. The father could be a righteous person and a pious person and a sage and a scholar, and but if his spouse or the person he had children with is not Jewish, then his children are not Jewish. And there could be, and unfortunately that happens also in Israel, in some places, there could be that the father is a terrorist, a Muslim terrorist, and there's a phenomenon like this. It's been around for probably 10, 20 years, where young Arab men who seemed impressive, and they would try to temptate Jewish girls who are usually coming from poor and weak socioeconomical backgrounds to go with them, and they buy all kinds of gifts. There's a pattern of behavior. This is being studied in Israel. They buy all kinds of gifts and they impress them, and then once they bring them into their village, there's no way out. And of course, and that's when they show them that they're the filthy Jew, and he's the and there are children in many cases, and there could be quite often with these stories, it could be Ahmad ben Sarah or Muhammad, the son of Sarah, meaning a Jewish woman, and that child is Jewish. So there is an organization in Israel called Yad La'achim, which one of their activities is to try and rescue these Jewish women, because rescue is required. They can't just get up and leave. Usually these relationships turn violent very quickly, and as I said, there's no freedom, there's no way out, and unfortunately, so there could be a case where you have a Muslim terrorist and his children are Jewish. Quite unfortunate, but yes.
In Chinese, we have a problem. If a man is not bad, women don't like him.
If a man is not bad, the women.
Bad boys,
Really?
we say in English too.
Really?
The women go for the bad boys.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, my impression of Taiwanese people, which is slightly different than from what I know. I don't know. I wasn't.
Everybody in Taiwan knows it's a proverb.
Really? Really?
Yes.
Women want to play with the playboys and then marry the accountant later. Phases, right?
Okay.
Once they want kids, they want stability before.
Okay. So, but the accountant is the one that prevails, right? I mean, eventually the one that they stay next to for the 50 years or whatever is not the bad boy, is it?
Should I tell you?
They're getting the money.
Should I tell you the habits of somebody who I knew as a summer camp counselor who later ended up at a Reform synagogue in California? Being the family lady and all that. But I'll just suffice it to say
spare for me.
That way, and on a camping trip with senior staff where people were supposed, well, I better not give you all the details.
Yeah.
But we were sharing a cabin when we came back into Yosemite, and she and her friend decided, great, having an audience, that gives enough.
Okay, yeah, you've disclosed more than enough.
Years later, she was, the good mom, the family lady, and it's like, oh, she was a little embarrassed that I recognized her. I didn't say anything, but she knew that I knew.
And let's look at the sources. Where do we know Judaism is determined by the mother? This is not something that made up. This is from the Torah itself. Here is what it says. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. First, the counting about going by the father. Take the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel by families, following their father's house. A head count of every male according to the number of their names. Rashi, following the father's house, if one's father was from one tribe, his mother from another tribe, is counted with his father's tribe. Also in Gemara and Talmud Kiddushin, wherever there's a valid betrothal and no sin, the child follows the male with regards to familiar status. And also in Numbers, the family of Chetzonite, from Chetzon, the family of Carmite, from Carmi, the same. It goes by the father, both the priesthood and the family name and the tribal affiliation. What?
Does that leave some room if the dad's a bad guy for the kid to follow the mother or something? There could be a case where there is no evidence of who the father is, and then there's a big question of it's called shtuki and asufi. Things happen in the world, and let me give you on the news. It just like things happen in the world, it happened 3,000 years ago. It was the same concept of the father has his little contribution of drops of semen, and then he could just disappear. Sowing oats we call it.
Oh, that's what they call it, what?
Sowing oats.
Sowing oats. Okay.
S-O-W-I-N-G.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know that. Sowing, like you sow in the field.
Sowing oats is like planting the oats
Okay.
in the fields.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sowing, yeah, I know. Sowing and then harvesting. Right.
Sowing, yeah. Sowing.
Okay.
Will not be there for the harvest.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's probably what is referring to. So let's look at what the scripture says about Jewishness coming from the mother. Look at this nice picture. Isn't it nice? I wish I would have paid for it. You see the watermark on it? Okay. So here's what Numbers says. Okay, I had to copy the whole thing, so here it is. You shall not intermarry with them. These are rules with regards to the Jewish people going to enter the land of Israel. And the land of Israel was inhabited by some people who were, how to say it in English, up to no good. Some people were idol worshippers, murderers, rapists, and all kinds of stuff that you would want anything to associate with. But it says like this: you shall not intermarry with them, you shall not give your daughter to his son, and you shall not take his daughter for your son. For, why is it so? He will turn away your son from following me, and they will worship the gods of others. Here's what Rashi explains. What does it mean for he will turn away your son from following me? That is, the heathen son, if he marries your daughter, will turn away your grandson, which is your son, your grandson, whom your daughter will bear to him from following me. Okay? So your daughter marries an individual, and this individual, this person, this man, is going to probably tell his little kid, oh, these Jews, oh, don't take your mother's family, or whatever, and, follow this God, worship idols, and that. This teaches us that your daughter's son, born of a heathen man, is called your son, but your son's son, born of a heathen woman, a non-Jewish woman, is not called your son, but her son. For Scripture first says, do not give your daughter to his son, and do not take his daughter for your son. Then it follows with, for he will turn away your son. However, referring to do not take his daughter, it does not say, for she will turn away your son. Why? Because it is considered her son, not yours. So what happens is, when a Jew marries a non-Jewish woman, the non-Jewish woman's children, she's the dominant, the woman is the dominant. There's no longer a connection. Of course, there's a physical connection. No one can deny that. Well, like we said, there's genetics and testing and knowing who's the father, who's the mother, and whatever. But once a non-Jewish woman conceives, even from a Jewish man, no more. That's it. The son is no longer considered your son. Okay, not considered your son or your grandson. So then there's no warning against whether he worship idols. Well, he's not Jewish. He'll worship idols. Non-Jewish people worship idols. It is what it is, right? But whereas if your daughter marries a local person, okay, so we got a Jewish boy here, and watch out, because the Jewish boy might learn all kinds of things that he's not supposed to do. What?
But he will definitely not learn Hebrew.
Oh yeah, well that's another issue, right? I know you're very strong on it. Yeah.
Genetic typing in groups that claim they're Jews that are not officially recognized by Israel. There's like on the border with India, one group. There's groups in Zimbabwe.
There's Falashmura in Ethiopia.
But they're recognized.
Yeah, they are recognized.
Lemba.
Lemba?
In South Africa.
Okay.
In
Zimbabwe, okay.
There's a group of people that said, our ancestors built Great Zimbabwe. 2,000-year-old structures that are falling apart of stone that look like what was made in the Middle East a couple of thousand years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did genetic typing. American Jewish scientist guy did all this, and he said you can see where there's the markers that say these are Jews, and they were. And they said they went through a place in Yemen that's no longer one of those. It's no longer a city. It's a town from history.
Uh-huh.
But they could tell where they came and how they came through Africa. And of course, Louis Farrakhan, who's a black Muslim guy who's terribly anti-Semitic. It's a sty in his eye because these guys are very, very black, and they put on tefillin and all that. But they said we are Jews. Genetic typing proved they indeed are. So where did those people fall in?
So are they persecuted in Zimbabwe for being Jewish, or they're?
I don't know if they're persecuted, but they're.
Well, you're not persecuted and not Jewish. What are you talking about? Yeah.
So I don't know if they're mucked about with.
Yeah.
They do Jewish ritual.
I'll tell you what, with regards to also to some of the Ethiopian Jews, and once trace is lost right? Because eventually, you have to marry out of the tribe, right? And right. So I mean, obviously, if you come preliminary, the big tribe as big as possible, but still, you can marry a first cousin, second cousin, but then your children, and with the world population, and I'm assuming in Africa, it's also the same, with regards to poverty and all kinds of other conditions that are, diseases and everything. So once there's no trace, then we would question their whole status. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not about saying, "Oh, you guys are not Jewish." We just don't know whether you're Jewish or not.
So they did the genetic typing and they found the markers.
Okay, but even the genetic typing can come from the father. It's not necessarily from the mother.
There is the mitochondria that comes from the mother.
Okay.
And the Y chromosome comes from the dominant sex.
Look at you. There's some ladies listening to us. Not anymore. Yes. By all means, yeah, this is democracy.
I think this system of assigning to mother is based on nature. For example, from my field, why do we say mother tongue and not father tongue?
Okay, good question.
And when there are two different, tongues, like father speaks, for example, Hebrew, and the mother speaks English, or the other way around, okay. So I think it's very legitimate to speak about father tongue just as well. It was the same with my family when I had a family. There was mother tongue and father tongue for the kids. But mother is so naturally closer. So if the mother is a foreign woman, she will win them away from Judaism. I think that's the
interesting. Yeah, there's something about that also with common sense, about the mother being away from religion, and it's inevitable that the influence would come from the mother. We find an example to that. This is talking about after the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonian kings and the Babylonian exile, and then if Reuben was here, would he give us the whole outline of how things were, right? The whole rundown. Maybe he's listening. Reuben, if you're listening, I hope I'm not making any mistakes. Okay, so the Babylonian Empire, then the Median Empire, then the Persian Empire, and of course the Persian king Cyrus, who was extended his hands and agreed for the Jews to return to Zion, to Israel, and rebuild the temple. And there was an individual named Ezra and Nehemiah. They were the leaders of the Jewish people. And the Jewish people, they were in Babylonia, and they said, finally, the time has come and permission is given. We're all going back to our homeland, to our motherland, by the way, right? To say motherland, we're going back to our homeland, to Israel. We'll rebuild the temple and finally gather everyone from wherever they are. And lo and behold, surprisingly, his call was not answered by as many people as he expected. It was only just a second. It was only 42,000 people. This is all described in the book of Nehemiah, that had answered his call and agreed to go with him back to the promised land, to the Holy Land. And this was also, that group of people were not extremely religious or observant. This is, remember, after 70 years of exile. You'd imagine what 70 years of suffering and exile are. So these people who agreed to go back to Israel were not necessarily married to Jewish women or Jewish men. And the prophet says about how Ezra gathered the nation, and he said, you want to go to Israel, this is great, but we have to put a distinction and make a clear mark of who's Jewish and who's not Jewish, just for knowing, right? And this is, by the way, an answer to some people who would say that going by the mother is only a novelty, and originally it all came from the father. There are some researchers that are saying that until the time of our sages, it was only by the father, but only later it went by the mother. And here we have Ezra that we're talking about. More than almost 4,000 years ago, and they were already then. This is where the quote from. Here's a little Here, this was the quote that I said from Kiddushin earlier. Ezra 10, and now let us make a covenant with our God to cast out all the wives and their offspring by the counsel of Lord, and those who hasten to perform the commandment of our God, and according to the law, it shall be done. So this is quite harsh, but there was times of harsh decisions, and here Ezra says, we have to make that separation and telling us who's going to Israel. And of course, this only increases the question of why is it so? Why Judaism? So we have the evidence from Torah. We have what happened during the time of almost building the second temple. And so here you brought a few ideas, a few opinions of what it is. So here, let's look a little into another story that happened in the book in the end of Parashat Emo. Yes, you wanted to say something. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, I almost did. Yeah.
About the motherland.
Yes.
That's relative. Enough Yiddish to understand what's Vaterland.
Yes. Vaterland, yes.
In German, they say Vaterland.
Oh, really? Is that so?
And I suspect if the Germans do so, and probably many other languages also defining your Eretz Moledet.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in Hebrew, that's gender neutral.
Yeah, it is.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is. Although the land in Hebrew is feminine, it's not masculine. The Eretz Nehederet, Eretz Gdola, Eretz Yafa, land is feminine.
Land gives birth.
Yeah, right. Also in computer science, right? Motherboard, right? Not fatherboard, motherboard, right? You put all PCB, right? Right? No? I mean, we're in Taiwan. This is a semiconductor. Fathers, all the things you stick on the motherboard that are not necessarily supposed to be there. Yeah, okay. There we are. We got worked out also for Taiwan. So here in the end of Parashat Emo, the blasphemer. Okay, a person who goes out and pronounces the name of God and gives it a nice juicy swearing. Now the son of an Israelite woman, and he was the son of an Egyptian man, went out among the children of Israel, and they quarreled in the camp. This son of the Israelite woman and the Israelite man, the son of the Israelite woman, pronounced the name in blasphemy. So were several questions about it. This is written in the end of Parashat Emo. We were reading that probably a month or two ago. The son of a Jewess and an Egyptian. Why was there a fight? What made him swear? This story started actually in the time of Moses. This is when Moses was saved. You remember Moses was put in the basket in the water. His mother, Yocheved, his father, Amram. There was a decree to kill all the Jewish babies. And we were talking about it, why they put him in the river. This is how they annulled the decree, because then the stargazers saw, okay, there's no reason now to throw Jewish babies. That's it. Work is done. The baby that was supposed to go in the water went into the water. Of course, he went into the basket. The daughter of Pharaoh went to bathe and saw a basket with a beautiful Jewish baby. And, how did she know it was Jewish? She just, took out his diaper and realized right away he was a Jew, right? And then she finds favor in this beautiful baby, and she decides she wants to keep it. She goes back to the palace. I'm not sure how she explained her father about having a baby. This is not written. This is not written anywhere. Yeah, but she went to bathe without a baby, and she came back with a baby. Anyway, Moses was growing up. Well, our friends the Christians have a similar story in their background, right? So sorry, all Christians, but anyways, so Moses, who is the reason why Pharaoh made this whole decree of killing the Jewish babies, is eventually growing up as Pharaoh's grandson within Pharaoh's palace. Look at that for revenge. How God has a great sense of humor. So Moses, the redeemer of the Jewish people, who Pharaoh was so afraid of, is growing up as Pharaoh's grandson in Pharaoh's palace. And of course, Moses grows up and realizes he's quite different than his so-called mother and so-called her father, and he realizes he's Jewish, and he walks out and he gets the sense of what it is, and he sees the first scene as he walks out as an adult and a person who realized who he was. He saw an Egyptian man hurting a Jewish man, and he walks closer and what's the story? And it turns out that this Jewish man had a wife, that she was good looking and nice and all that, and this Egyptian person decided that this filthy Jew is not worthy to be intimate with this one beautiful woman, and he should do that. So he went in and did whatever he had to do, or didn't have to do, but wanted to do. And then when the Jewish person realized, he was obviously not so happy. And the Egyptian, because the Jews were tortured and enslaved in Egypt, he didn't have much of a say. The Jewish man was being beaten up by the Egyptian for discovering what happened last night. Moses gets in there in the middle of the scene and he kills the Egyptian person, right? How did he kill him? Didn't have to do no jujitsu, right? God, our sages say he jujitsu. I'm sorry. Well, that's a good novelty. You got. Oh, okay, yeah. So, sorry. So he pronounced the name of God, and with special attention, and the person just literally dropped dead. And then this story, okay, fast forward several years, there was a baby born from that night of the Egyptian man and the Jewish woman, and this baby was pushed away by the tribes because the identity of his father was, either was not known or was known that it was the Egyptian man. She was raped, obviously, so she did not hide this fact. And this individual who wants to settle, this is the time where, there were tribes and each one had to stay with their tribe, and there were, the system had to work. We have description in our... What? No, the tribal affiliation goes by the father. But this individual, so he wanted to set his tent in the tribe of the mother. And the people of the tribe said, you don't belong here. He said, well, my mother's really your father. It goes by the father. He said, I don't know my father. You don't know what my father is. He went to the court, and Moses had, kind of a creative way to tell him that he has to find a way, right, to be somewhere. And he was really upset. And he had a fight with the other person. I think it was the tribe of Dan, right? Yeah, Shlomi. But if we, okay, and this, okay. So Rashi says he was the son of a Jew. So the Torah says he was the son of a Jewess and the Egyptian. And here we find interesting. Rashi, among the children of Israel. This teaches us that he converted. Okay, converted? Why converted? Although he was halachically a Jew, his mother was Jewish, since he was born to a Jewish mother. He converted here means that he immersed and was circumcised at Mount Sinai among the children of Israel. That is, together with all the children of Israel. This is what Ramban brings in Torah Kohanim as well. So here, by the way, is an evidence. Some people say, okay, he converted. Why did he convert? Because his father was a Jewish. You see? It goes by the father. No, Ramban explains, what does he mean converted? Converted here, that he went into the people. Though he was halachically a Jew, but being excommunicated, again, not in his fault, but that's, life is like that. Unfortunately, one of the biggest example is something called mamzer. I don't know how to say that in English, but a child that was born. No, I don't. That's a bad word. The child that was born from a married woman who went with someone else other than her husband. Right.
Like an illegitimate child.
Illegitimate, that's how it's called?
Bastard is technically right.
Really? Bastard is the way I...
It's a proper term. The word bastard, c'est bâtard en français.
Bâtard, ouais.
Okay, is that.
Exactly. Oh, really? Oh, exactly.
Yeah. And then it became something like synonymous to scoundrel.
Uh-huh. So this person, this baby, this boy, this woman, it's not their fault, right? That there was some sort of a relationship that wasn't supposed to happen, and yet they're excommunicated, right? You see that, it's a swear word, it's a bad word. People use that. What is it their fault?
Is that a nice word?
No, I'm saying it's a bad word. So what is their fault, right? One of the unfortunate cases where we can't blame them, but that's how it is. So the Rambam brings, this is by the way, Torah Kohanim is brought, the Rambam, I didn't bring the whole quote, but it's brought in the name of the French sages, Chachmei HaTzafatim. The French sages were the ones who explained what it means that he converted. What?
Is mamzer related to Zar?
Zar, okay, Zar, foreign stranger, mamzer, I'm not sure, the word mamzer is written, so I don't know what...
By stranger beginning.
Yeah, obviously, stranger is someone who doesn't belong.
There is an authority. It's called Ben Shushan.
Ben Shushan. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll look into it. Okay. Okay. Here, we're back to where we were about going. Why does it go by the mother? So we we go into looking at the time we're at. This is the time of we're about to receive the Torah from God. As you know, every year we reenact the receiving of Torah by having the celebration of Shavuot. Cheesecakes, that's one of the things, but also most important is to read the Ten Commandments as if we get it from God. And first time it happened, not cheesecake, the Ten Commandments.
Moses cheesecake.
Used to do what?
I used to bring Moses cheesecakes.
Oh, okay.
Teacher Moshe liked cheesecakes.
Oh, you like cheesecake?
Really nice ones from the store and bring them to him.
Aha.
So I got to hang out.
Is it okay to write today?
You can write whatever you want,
I
yes.
just want to know this one to check.
Okay, by all means. Yeah, you can write. I'm using my computer, you can write. So Moses ascended to God, and the Lord called him from the mountain, saying, so shall you say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel, who are the house of Jacob? These are the women. Think of it this way. Moses comes down from God. He's all excited. He's all enthusiastic. God told him the Torah and everything. Who does he summon first? Who does he gathers the women first. He understands. But God tells him, the house of Jacob. The house of Jacob is going for the women, and then the sons of Israel, that goes for the men. What?
That's a misogynistic joke, but there's telegraph, telephone, telewoman. They'll get the word out faster than the guys will.
maybe that was one of the reasons. Moses understands from God that the gateway to becoming Jewish goes through the women. It has to come from the women, right? It has to be. This is what gives the ground to everything. Originally, we think, okay, let's call the man, and then the man would let their women know, and everyone would know. But no, he gets the women first, and he understands by God's explanation when we have something to articulate, to convey, make sure the women are the ones who are briefed, and they are the ones to enact it. It's not, again, this is not just a message from God. This is about being. This is about becoming. What, you're saying something? Okay.
Question, I just don't get it. Why is house of Jacob mean women?
That's how our sages translate it or understand it, or and here also King David says to God, okay, he says in the Zohar, turn to me and be gracious to me, grant your might to your servant and save the son of your maidservant. Ani avdecha ben amatecha. So Zohar asks, wasn't David the son of Yishai? Why did he ask in the name of his mother? Right? David had, his father was one of the most righteous people that ever lived. There were 7 people that the Gemara brings. 7? No, 4. 4 people the Gemara brings that died just because death was decreed on the world. In fact, they were perfect, so perfect that they did not have any sin. The Gemara being one of them. Everyone remembers that's the father of David. And yet when David speaks to God, he says, have mercy for me. I am your servant, the son of your maidservant, the son of your, right? So King David understands there's something about the mother that has more towards God. And it's quite simple, right? We know that, like you were saying in the beginning of the class, the father could not necessarily be there, and the mother is always there. And
brainwashing the kids.
Brainwashing. Okay. You had a little experience that is not so favorable, but I'm sorry about that. Well, it is.
That's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
Maybe if I came here 15 years earlier, but you weren't here.
Yeah, I wasn't here. Well, I've been here only 9 years. Here's the story that happened in Austria. This is a story that was told from the chief rabbi of Cholon, Rabbi Gurari, and he heard it from the person. As you know, in the eve of the break of World War II, there was a situation called Anschluss. This is when the Germans took Austria, and they just literally extended Germany into Austria. Became, they completely took it, and it became a part of their kingdom. And of course, the first to suffer from the Anschluss were the Jewish people. And this story happened in a small village or a small suburb of Vienna. And the Nazis started a selection, of course, and they went between the houses, getting Jewish people to identify themselves. And of course, they took him to camp. which unfortunately many did not return from. One of the houses had a Jewish family, and they managed to find a place to hide. They moved furniture. I don't know if you ever watched movies from the Holocaust, but there's some description. I mean, I know firsthand accounts from my grandmother, but there's some description of how the Jews were trying to be creative in finding hiding places within their houses. The Nazis went in, they couldn't find, right? And Frank, of course, yeah, we always say the joke, no wonder they found her. You've been to Amsterdam, every street corner says Anna Frank. Of course they found her. So this family, this Jewish family, managed to find a hiding place, and this is the time when the Nazis raided that place, that village, that little suburb of Vienna, and they were looking for Jews, and this family had managed to hide, and the child, who was quite brave, decided he can't stay, in this whatever hiding place it was, and he wanted to get some fresh air. So he poked his little hand out of the window, and he sees something that changed his life forever. Across the street, there was a house which was well established, and there lived a Jewish lawyer, an attorney, a Jewish lawyer that lived there, and he had a German, not a Jewish last name or German last name, so I guess, and he wasn't Jewish altogether. He didn't act Jewish, he didn't look Jewish, and the Nazis, and he was also well established, well connected with the mayor of that little city, and and he had and the Nazis, they literally skipped over his house. They couldn't even imagine that that there's a Jew living here, and this little child looks at how the Nazis are going from the house previous to the next house, and then he sees that this individual, this person, walks out from his house. He walks into his patio, into his front yard, and he screams at the Nazi soldiers. He says, "Ich bin a Jud, I'm Jewish. Ich bin a Jud." He says to them, and the Nazis, of course, did not like that, and they shot him. They shot him dead on the spot. The child, of course, being such a surreal experience engraved in the little child's mind, survived the war, and after the war, he decided he wants to go back to his parents' place, to where he grew up, and he wanted to find out what really happened that day. And he managed to trace, with the last name and with the fact that he lived close by, he managed to trace the aunt of this individual who lived somewhere else. And that's how she survived the Holocaust. And he says, "I'd like to tell you about what I saw. Your nephew, we all knew he was a Jew, but they didn't know he was Jewish. And when they looked for Jews, he could have been saved because nobody thought he was Jewish. But he still went on and told them he was Jewish right in front of them, like in their face, kind of losing face, we call it, in their face. And of course, the end was quite tragic. So the aunt told him as following. She says, this individual he was Jewish by descent, but had nothing Jewish. Even his parents, right? His parents were already like that, completely secular, completely, nothing to do. Yeah, nothing to do. But the grandmother, the mother of his mother, who lived with the parents when the individual was a little child, used to put the little child, her grandson, to sleep, and she used to sing a song in Yiddish. She knows that she's the aunt because she got the same song, and she says that she sings a song to him in Yiddish before he goes to sleep, and the song words, it wasn't told to Rabbi Gorai, it doesn't told to me. I don't know what the lyrics were, but there was a line that gets back after a few times, and it says, "Du bist Yid, du bist Yid, you are Jewish, you are Jewish." And she says to him, when the child falls asleep, she says to him, "You are Jewish, you are Jewish." And then, of course, at the time of test, he actually couldn't or did not want to hide the fact he was Jewish. And, this kind of burst out of him at that moment, when he was confronted by the Nazis. What?
I understand that Yiddish is kind of high on the agenda of the Lubavitcher community.
Is kind of what?
High on the agenda of the Lubavitcher community.
Well, the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave his talks in Yiddish, so I guess it's a matter of...
Is it written with Latin letters?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you should write it in Hebrew letters. But today, our class is mostly, you're always saying everyone... No, you said everyone should speak Hebrew. I'm with you on that. But in the time, if we wait until they all study Hebrew, we'll be left without a job. It's,
Explain it to us. It's not the Chinese characters.
Yeah.
This is 22.
I hope you're not saying everyone should study Chinese. What?
So there's two movies. One, I missed the actual dramatization, the Hollywood one that played when I was in Taichung. And the library at their art museum has the actual story. Klimt, who was a very, very famous Austrian artist. I don't know if you know the story about this, but the Lady in Gold, that famous painting.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yes.
group of Jews there who made lots of money with sugar refining. The Nazis came and basically chased them out, and they went to Switzerland, they got out, at least I think all of them, they left, and they had to leave all the wealth behind, and the family decided they were going to go back. Klimt made this picture of the wife, right? She was a socialite who had tea and all this stuff, and all the intellectuals come in her living room when Austria was like quite a intellectual place.
Yeah, it was always a capital of a kind of
avant-garde, right?
Yeah.
All that kind of thing. So this was a picture of her, and her family decides they want to get it.
That's the Hollywood movie about? You're saying
No,
about
this
trying
is
to
a true
retrieve?
story. This is a
Oh, I think we're trying to retrieve the.
Yeah, the movie is about that. Yeah, but I didn't see the Hollywood movie. I knew it played. I missed it. But
Sure, you can find it online, can't you?
I watched the DVD. Well, I watched the DVD.
Uh-huh.
It's a true story. What they had to go through with the Austrian courts, like, Austria is still very anti-Semitic, as we've talked about. The guy who had the unfortunate or very fortunate car accident.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the second one. And the Israelis.
Young Haida, no? Haida, I think was his name, yeah.
Whatever, but anyway, the point is.
Car accidents happen. People die car accidents, yeah.
Sometimes for good reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, they had to fight like hell, and the Austrians gave every excuse possible not to release that painting. They said it belongs to Austria, and they said, no, it was our mother. It was our family's painting we paid for. And they tried to come up with all this stuff. There was an American team of lawyers that finally nailed them. I think they had to go to the World Court for the final arbitration, like the equivalent of going to the Supreme Court. And they finally ruled against Austria.
What was her name?
I don't remember the Jewish lady's name. Klimt was the artist.
I know Klimt. He's my favorite artist.
A woman in gold.
What was her name?
Portrait of somebody.
Probably her name was Miriam, Shoshana, Chava. She had a Jewish name.
There's one woman in gold when they define it.
There's one classic painting. But anyway, they lived in LA, and they couldn't keep the art because you have to do a lot of stuff to keep art from getting bad. So they ended up selling it to some private collector, giving scholarships to all the people in their family.
Wow.
To go to university with it. Yeah.
Okay. So here's what.
A happy ending. But Austria was saying, no, we're as anti-Semitic as ever, and we're going to fight you to the death for your property that belongs to us.
Yeah.
That's what they did to them.
Unfortunately, it still happens. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
A little aside, but you mentioned about the German Jewish names. I watched the YouTube by an absolutely moronic anti-Semite. His content is like this.
Did you see a smart anti-Semite?
This is the most moronic in the world. He said, okay, I'll tell you what he said. He says the Jews are trying to hide their identity and change to the names that are just like normal Jewish names, like Goldstein. I know one, his name was Grun, and he changed to Ben Gurion to hide his identity.
That's how it's very hiding. Yeah, Israel International Airport. Yeah, well, this guy is Jewish. I mean, Israel is an international airport. He was the first prime minister. Yeah, is this guy Jewish?
One of my teachers taught to stand on his head.
Moshe Feldenkrais. Nice. Okay, so here's what it is. Judaism is no political party. It is not a behavior, not even a faith. Judaism is an identity. Education is not about teaching behavior. It is about teaching someone to love something. This could only be done by the mother who has the natural worth and love. This is what is it called? You can't deny it. Indeniable? You could say that.
No, Christians
No, yeah, I know. That's why it's not the center of our answer.
Moms are more patient than dads.
Yeah, I guess by definition, right? Yeah, it is. So what is education? What does it mean? We find how the father has, the weight on the son to have, like we said, the tribal affiliation and the, the status of priesthood, and of course the family name, and of course, but the mother is what gives the child his essence. And we were talking about it last year, I think it was last year, about, we were talking about Moses now. Moses' birth and how he was put in the basket. Moses' father, Amram, had to remarry his mother, Yocheved. Now, when they remarried, this was after their daughter, Miriam, told them that, because of Pharaoh's decree, Amram was the leader of the generation, and because of Pharaoh's decree about killing all the Jewish babies, he said, what are we going to reproduce for? They're killing our babies. Let's just stop, right? So he divorced his wife. And when his daughter, Miriam said, look what you're doing, because you divorced your wife, everyone else divorced their wife, and there's no way for us to survive. Even with the decree, some babies are still managed to spare. Also, the decree was only on baby boys, and baby girls would survive. And she persuaded her father because the Jewish boys were cast into the water because that's what the stargazers saw, that there's going to be a Jewish leader that would take away this Jewish people from Egypt, and that's why Pharaoh had decreed this decree to begin with. Little did he know, this Jewish leader is growing up in his own palace. But of course, that's like we said, God's sense of humor. So Miriam says to her father, what are you doing? Why did you divorce? You have to remarry. We need to reproduce. Now, remarrying, okay, he remarries the same woman. Of course, there was no feud between them. She was 130, right? 130 years old. And he's marrying her to reproduce. Okay, this is quite an interesting idea. And Amram says to his wife and to his family, right? They remarry, they come back together, and Amram says, we're in the need of something that's above nature. And he says he needed some Yocheved. What was so special about Moses' mother? Yocheved was the first, the Jewish person that was born, right? Ben Achamot, as they entered Egypt. This is the time where Jacob had a son, Joseph. Joseph was the king of Egypt. There was famine, right? He called and he had to get his brothers and this whole story, we know the story. And then finally there's no food anywhere, just in Egypt, and Joseph was the one to take care of that. And he says, tell my father, come settle in Egypt. And as they walked, Jacob was reluctant to go to Egypt. He didn't want to leave Israel, but he wasn't planning on settling in Egypt. But God told him, yes, it is what it is. You have to be there. This is a decree that was from the time of Abraham. And as they walked into Egypt, as they entered, Yocheved was born. Yocheved was born. This was something that belonged to the time, the era. She was the last person that belonged to the era of pre-Egypt. We're talking they were there for 400 years, or nearly 210, but we add all the numbers. So this is the only person that stayed from the pre-Egypt generation. And Amram remarrying her, saying, reproducing 130, it's not about the age, it's about who this person is. This person, this individual, the mother of Moses, is the one that could still have connection to the pre-Egypt time. And this is where redemption would come from. You wanted to say something first, yeah?
Also, that's not very directly relevant, but the story of Joseph was written out in a wonderful novel by a German, Thomas Mann, not Jewish German, and he was anti-Nazi. He immigrated to America as soon as Hitler appeared on the horizon, and there he wrote this huge novel, Joseph and his brothers, trying just to popularize the Jewish case to the world while the Jews were being slaughtered. It's a wonderful novel and just...
Interesting. Okay.
Just great.
Okay. What did you want to say, Rick? Maybe can you close the door?
You heard about Thomas Mann?
I did not. I'm sorry.
He wrote another book that's very, very famous. He's very famous right now. I'm trying to remember the name of the book that made him...
Is it related to...
It's not that book. It's another book.
To this house.
Never mind, whatever. Okay, I just don't know. Okay.
The point I was going to make is when you said it was like, let's have some more kids, and it's like, at that point, they don't have to worry about sex appeal because they can hardly see. So, there you go. Okay, so it has to be about the person and not the sex appeal.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what Chassidut is telling about this whole idea. Here's what, right, we said the seed is in the hands, the seed is the father, but it all comes in the hands of the mother. The father could be a person's teacher, advisor, giving content, but the mother is the one, of course, she could be a teacher and advisor, of course, but the thing that you can't take away from her is the fact that she determines the child's identity. We could see that both in Torah context, but also in common sense. The Rebbe explains, even using just common sense, there's no room to say that a child would follow the father with regards to setting his Judaism. The father's part expresses, what did you say, sowing oats, and a drop of semen forming an embryo, and later a whole person is only a result of staying 9 months in a mother's womb with all the challenges and difficulties the mother has to bear. Naturally, the influence of a child's essence is completely dependent on the mother and not the father. Hence, only the mother is to determine a child's Jewishness. So that's even beyond just because the Torah says so. But of course, this is common sense. The mother is the one that is the more dominant with the development of this child. And like we said, the father could be argued, maybe nowadays with genetic testing, which is also not 100% accurate, by the way, with genetic testing. Even courts could appeal that it's not 100%. You could say this person descends from this person, but there's a mixture of other things. So, other factors are also into it. So nothing, you could deny all that, but the fact that this baby was born from this woman, that's no question about it. Yes?
In the times much closer to Adam and Eve, women had to stay around the fire, take care of children, and cook. Men went to hunt.
Okay.
So, one consequence, by the way, is that the women are challenged with the sense of direction until today. The men who were challenged, they were weeded out. They didn't return. They were eaten by the tiger.
Men today will never stop to ask for direction.
Yeah.
But women stayed with the child. That's so natural.
Mm-hmm.
So a man, what would you do without that meat that he brings? Of course, it's also important.
Right.
But the child got brainwashing from the mother.
Okay, you say brainwash, we say education, but I know you mean well, Bezalel. I know you mean well. It's just terminology, that's all.
You know I'm a refugee from the Ivory Tower.
From the Ivory Tower. Oh,
Yes.
Okay. You should go to Ivory Coast. It's nice there. Oh, look at you.
When I get my own airplane.
Yeah. No, it's not nice there in Ivory Coast, in Abuja. No, not nice at all. Abidjan. Okay, this was a story about the war, the war in Europe, another World War story. World War II story. A woman in Russia in the name of Mrs. Shui. Hold on a second.
It's not Russia.
Is that Russia or Iran?
Wait, but wait.
I've been there.
But
I saw this thing.
let me tell you the story. Okay, a woman in Russia in the name of Miss Shui. Her father Shui, like water, probably Shui. Okay, Shui. It's called in Yiddish Shui. So her father and her husband died trying to. They were recruited to the Russian army or whatever it was there, and unfortunately, they did not survive. And she had 3 little kids, and she found herself stranded completely, and she decided she wants to. Is this my daughter?
No, it's the radio.
Okay. Did it survive?
Your daughter
Don't worry,
survived.
we'll buy a new one.
Your daughter survived.
Mine's not.
That was important.
Radio.
This is a crash test.
If it's going to work, that's impressive.
Yeah.
You can hear that.
It is made in Japan.
Don't put it in the power. I'm afraid we'll get all plugged out. Down, under, behind you. Go behind you this power. Working? Okay.
Looks like it should be working.
Okay, great. So, in order to get away from the whole mess, she decided to go to Bukhara. Working. Okay. And And she went to, so you were at the place in Samarkand, Vitzal, you were in this place?
Well, I had to first of all protest very vehemently against bumping all former Russian colonies with Russia itself.
I'm sorry.
I was born in Ukraine, and when they call me Russia, I do bonkers. Because Ukraine has a Jewish president now, and had a Jewish prime minister. Okay, the Russians are anti-Semites, just the one I cited.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Uzbekistan.
I know, I'm saying, but she came from Russia. Okay, but this...
They may be a little terrorist, on the terrorist side. But you know the Jews from Bukhara? That's next to it. Next to Samarkand, there is...
Tashkent, Samarkand.
Tashkent is not an old city. This is really has history. And I went there as a teenager, about 20. Just before I left those horrible places. I went there just to see that architecture.
Oh, really?
Yes, just with that.
Nice. Okay. So she had to run away, and she had to escape to some place that, she could have some peace of tranquility in those years. And, she managed to find a job to support herself and her 3 children, but she was very troubled by the fact that the children did not have any Jewish education. One day, she saw a person in the street who was sporting a beard. It was a Chabad Chassid. It was a disciple of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. And she said to him, I beg you, could you help my son to get education? And he said, I'm not from here. I just came to visit relatives or something. And she said, is there a yeshiva there? And this is a time of the Soviet Union. Everything had to be done underground. And he said, yes, there is a yeshiva. She said, could you take my son? And he said, okay. And she took her son. He was around bar mitzvah. He was around 13 years old. He went to Samarkand, right, to that place where they had that underground Jewish yeshiva. A few years go by, and she encounters the same individual. Again, he's there visiting, and she says, I have another child. And he says, how old is he? She says, he's 11. And he says to her, that's a problem, because 11, they still didn't have papers at the age of 11. And going on the train, crossing some borders, is very dangerous. And she said, I don't care, whatever risks are there, I want you to take my son and bring him to Jewish education, because that's what matters to me the most. She went to Bukhara, and the yeshiva was in Samarkand.
In the Soviet times.
Yeah.
There were no borders.
Oh, so there were no... Anyway, going on the train. Okay, going on the train. It's okay, no borders, but going on the train, checkpoints, yeah. No borders, it was all USSR. Anyway, a period goes by, and this is okay, 2 kids, she's hoping they're okay. I guess there's some letters going on, and there's the youngest son, and this individual shows up again, and he says to her, forget it, I'm not taking you. He's too young. He was 8 at the time, going to yeshiva. And she says, no, you have to take him. No, forget it. He said, we had to go through all the trouble when you sent me the younger kid, and I couldn't. And she decided to, it has to be done. So she takes the child with her to the train station, and she is going to push him into the train, looking for, this chassid, this individual. And she says, once you're on the train, he's not going to leave you. He doesn't want to take you, but once you're on the train. And the child is in, the age of 8, and he doesn't want to leave. He's crying. She's crying. He says, I want to leave. I don't know what's going to be. And she says to him, I will come and I will be with you. Just give me some time. I'll get some money. I'll get a passport. I'll get everything. And I will come with you, and I'll meet you in Samarkand. And she pushes him to the train. She took, I don't know what exactly, not passport, but ID. We call it passport, well, ID.
Pass papers.
Yeah, pass papers.
Yeah. Nobody would travel abroad.
Okay.
Even the Jews could not leave until 1970.
Yeah, you know better. You were there, right? So she managed to get some funds. She allocates some funds, and she gets some documents. Probably forged documents, because Jews couldn't travel so freely in those days. And she gets to the train, she buys a ticket, and she's thinking, okay, I'm going there, how would I find them? Everything is underground. How would I find my son? How would I find the yeshiva? How would I know where they are? Right? I mean, I pushed him to the train. That's the last I saw from him. How would I know? And she goes through the journey, and she doesn't know what to expect and what to think. And, yeah, a leap of faith. And finally, the train gets to the station of Samarkand, and everyone alights from the train, and she's also going down, and she doesn't know where to go, what to do. And all of a sudden, she hears a voice, "Mama, Mama!" And she turns around, she sees her son, the youngest son. And he says, "How did you know? How did you know I'm coming? How did you know?" And he says, "What do you mean? Before I left, you said you'll come to see me. So every day after I finish my school, I come to the train station waiting for you because I knew you will come. You said you'll come. I knew you'll come." And he says to her something so sweet as a child could say. He says, "Mothers never break promises." That's the quote of the story. Okay, I know you have something to some glasses on it. Okay, you might. Okay, and he says to her, "Mothers don't break promises," right? So that's the perception of a young child. But we could say there's a lot of wisdom in it, right? Mothers don't break promises. Mother, what?
Break all the promises to their husband.
Oh. Okay. Women are more aware of their spiritual part. They're easier to connect to spirituality. They're easier to depict abstract, and sometimes it's a little overdoing it. But men, we want things. We want to see it. Explain to me how this works, and I want to know everything from A to Z. Women, you just get them interested in the idea. That's why they're so easy to do shopping, right? A lot of our friends in the community, the Israelis who are very famous in trying to lure people into buying cosmetics, they don't have to do much. All they say, "Oh, they look so beautiful," and and they get the whole mentality of it. Now, of course, this could be exploited, like everything in life. It's a quality that could be exploited. But women are willing to give up on something for their own benefit, and they could relate to spiritual and to abstract and to essence much more clearly than a man. And that's why the father is the one to determine about the tribal affiliation and all the other things, but the mother is the one for, here's what the Rebbe says in Likutei Sichot, by women the faith and trust in God is much more openly revealed. This is why the Jewishness of a person is dependent on their mother, while the inner affiliation, Kohen Levi, are by the father. And now we can understand why God had proposed. I get your comment that you said they would get the message out, but why God said that first He has to get the women before the men, because they are the ones to determine the future of the people, of the Jewish people. And of course, with it, they had to correct what was done in the first encounter of a man and a woman, right? This is when she ate from the tree, and then she influenced him to eat from the tree. So in order to correct that...
That's not she, that was the snake.
No, the snake had tempted her, right? That's how we know they were not Chinese, right? You know that joke, right? How do we know Adam and Eve were not Chinese? They would eat because they would eat with the snake, probably. The story could have been so much easier, right? Right? So here the women are correcting what was done wrong when the woman told the man to take. And here the women are the ones to take the messages of God and articulate it to the men. And that's how Jewish people had talked. And
the Chinese go for the meat, and the Jews go for the knowledge.
For the knowledge, right? It was tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge.
More important than the meat.
So just to summarize, this is a holiday where we all have that status of converts. We all reenact and redo that, and we should remember that all of us are here are men, but there's some women. I know that somebody told me they'll be watching or probably watching afterwards. We should know that this is the most important part, is the continuity. The continuity of Jewish people lies on Jewish women. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should all party as much as we want. We get established as soon as possible, probably relating to you more than anyone else here, because you're still at the age of Settling, God willing, settling. And Betzalel is celebrating today. He's 36 years of age, right? So we're very happy. Betzalel, 39. I'm sorry, yeah.
Never older than 39.
Yeah, he got stuck at 39. They stopped counting. Anyway, and with that token, and I see you very enjoyed the cupcakes. So this is just an intro to all the cakes and cookies and everything that's coming up on Friday. So, and Rick will be here just for a little while, God willing. Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, very possible.
Change the schedule and get more rest. So that
Okay, try to get some schedule change and see how that goes.
I did.
Okay.
I'll tell you about that.
Oh, okay.